and then confirm that if you do have a name on the screen, that name is correct, or tell me your name and who you're representing here today. So I'll start with Michael Berry. Mr. Berry, if you could unmute.
I'm Michael Berry. I'm here representing the applicant, South Block Properties.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you.
I have SR Margie. If you could unmute.
Yeah, I'm Sister Margie Niemer. I'm the administrator of St. Bernard's Church, which is the property on which the building in discussion is located.
Okay, great. And I have Dave Evans here.
Yes, I'm Dave Evans, and I am the business manager at St. Bernard Church.
Okay.
And also involved with the Village Development Corporation and the Spring Grove Village Community Council as well.
Okay. Are you appearing in your capacity as the business manager, or as a representative of the CDC or Community Council? Mr. Evans, if you could unmute.
Yes, I could be a representative of Village Development Corporation. I am treasurer of the board.
Okay. All right. Welcome. Let's see. I have a Gary Robbins. Mr. Robbins.
Yes. I don't know if you could see me on your screen. I seem to have trouble with my video this morning. Can you see me?
No, we cannot.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Gary Robbins, I'm president of the Community Council here in Spring Grove Village.
Okay, Gary, if you could attempt to get the camera portion working, that'd be great. If you do want to provide testimony, I know that we received a letter on behalf of the Village Council, so we can always let that speak for the council if necessary, but prefer to have video if you want to provide testimony. You can also try a different device, like a cell phone or something like that, if you're not already on it. Sometimes that's a good workaround.
Okay.
I have a gentleman under the name of Roy. Roy, if you could unmute.
I'm sorry, I'm here. I thought I was unmuted.
Sure, no problem. Could you give me your full name and who you're representing here today?
My name's Roy Howery. I live at 758 Derby Ave, across the street from the project that we're talking about here. Just sitting in to find out more about the project and details of it. Represent myself, sure. I suppose.
Sure. If you could spell your last name for me, sir.
Yeah, it's Howery.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Howery.
Thanks.
All right. I have someone under iPhone Joseph. Is that person here? If so, if you could unmute.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Joseph Oswald. I live at 4525 Circle Avenue. This project borders my entire backyard, and we are opposed to it.
Okay, I will give you a minute to provide some full testimony here in just a second. But if you could spell your last name for me.
Oswald.
Got it. And I see that it looks like you're on a cell phone. Are you able to activate the camera?
The camera was on and it shut off, and I'm not
sure. Joseph, Mr. Oswald, you're muted. You'll need to unmute. And there is a setting on the Zoom app to activate your camera. I don't know if that will do it. Looks like you're muted again. Mr. Oswald, I'm going to give you a minute to mess with that. If you want to provide testimony, I'm going to ask that you try to activate your camera. As I said to Mr. Robbins, you can always try a different device if the phone is not working. So I'll give you you'll have some time to try to get that working as we begin the hearing. Looks like we have Mr. Robbins attempting to sign in from different. There we go. Mr. Robbins, can you unmute just to see if this audio is working on this end? And I'll remove the other.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. All right, I'm going to remove the other sign in. Okay, great. I think we're ready to get started here. I'm going to read through our hearing script. This will basically just cover the procedure for the hearing, and then we'll jump into it. So this is the September 27th, 2023 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. As I said, I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati. I'll be presiding over the hearing. The case before us today is case number ZHUV230008. That's 745 Derby Avenue. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and any potential opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any potential opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. Anyone from the public will then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. In the event that any party, I will then also hear from two folks that I failed to sign in earlier, from the zoning department, Matt Lascheid and Emily Dayhouse. I'll allow them to provide any testimony in addition to the staff report that they produced. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. So for our purposes here today, Mr. Barry and then anyone else associated with this project, either the owners or anyone else from the applicant team, will have an opportunity to tell me about the project, why they think I should grant the relief, any background they think is necessary. I'll then go to the public. I'll then go to the zoning staff, come back to the applicants and owners, allow them to respond to anything that they've heard, make any closing statements, and then we'll wrap it up. After all presentations have been made, I'll close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. In the event of any technical difficulties, as we've already seen a little bit here, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly. If there's some technical defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and try to collectively swear in as many people as I can right now. If you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, really doing anything other than just strictly observing here today, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you, if you know that you'd like to provide some testimony during this hearing, I'm going to go ahead and collectively swear all those people in right now. If you're not certain if you want to provide testimony, I can swear you in later individually. But again, if you know you want to provide some testimony, please take yourself off of mute. Everyone needs to be off of mute. I need everyone to raise their right hand, and I need everyone to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes.
I do.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Howery, you're on mute. Need you to unmute. Mr. Howery, you're on mute. All right, I got everyone else. Thank you. Mr. Robbins, do you have a question about the procedure?
No.
Oh, you were just raising your virtual hand to be sworn. Is that it?
Yes.
Got it. All right. Mr. Howery, do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'll throw you back on mute. All right. Who's going to be taking the lead here today on the presentation? It'll need to be someone from the applicant or owner side.
Yeah. So that would be me. And I mean, we are this former that building has historically been used and built as a parish school for the St. Bernard parish there. And it sits right in the center of that campus. For the last couple decades, though, the building has been either only partially or underutilized or vacant, as many of the small parish schools have gone away. The parish, as well as folks from the Community Development Council, have sought a use for that building. I think that building has a lot of significance to the community. Many people grew up going to grade school there, and they'd like to see the building saved, but put to some reasonable use. And that's kind of how we came to be involved, talking with people both from the Village Development Corporation as well as the parish about what might be possible there. And so that's why we're here. We are proposing to convert that building to apartments. In the interest of full disclosure, those apartments would be income restricted. I think they would be what we often now consider workforce housing. So not that it's going to be extremely low income housing, but rents are going to be limited to be less than market rate. That's what we envision is needed. That's what we envision is feasible. That fits with, I think, the vision of the parish there for the kind of housing that they would like to see provided. The building itself is a 1.5 or 2-story building, if you will. It's got a split level basement and then a primary floor. I think it was built in such a way that a 3rd floor could be added to it. And that is our plan, provided that it is fully feasible from an engineering and financing perspective, which we believe it is. So, the alternative use for that piece of property is that it would be torn down and made way for something else. And I think that as I indicated before, a lot of people in the community do not want to see the building go away. It's got historical significance to the community. And it's not feasible that a 10,000 plus square foot building would be a single family house. I will note that there are very few parcels surrounding that building that actually meet the SF10 zoning code. You have, I know that Mr. Oswald indicated that his backyard backs up to the property. That's not really true because we're surrounded on all sides by the remaining parish campus. So to the east, there is the chapel. To the south are the other parish buildings, as well as parking. And then to the west is also parish parking. So we are surrounded on all sides by the parish or the public right of way in front, obviously.
Gotcha. And so was this property split off from the parish, so it's not associated in any way?
It was split off. Yes, okay. Yes. And kind of working with the parish on this, it was split off from the rest of the campus. If you look across the street, there's a daycare center. To the, on the other side of the west side of the parish campus, there's a large multifamily property that backs up to it. There are a number of single family homes that have far smaller lots than a 10,000 square foot lot. The streets are exceptionally wide. There's parking for the project. There's not really an economically feasible alternative. I know that at some point there was a developer that was interested in maybe converting the building to office uses, but for that developer, that ended up not being feasible. And I would presume that, at office use would be obviously probably more intensive, at least daytime traffic, et cetera. I think that is the project as it stands in a nutshell, if you will.
Okay. I have a few questions, but I think I'll hold off until we get through some more of the public comment and see if they're answered. But anything else right now, Mr. Berry?
I know. In pursuing this, as I indicated, we have worked directly with St. Bernard's Parish, members of the parish. We've been to community council meetings. There were no objections there. We've been to Village Development Corporation meetings. This is something that we've really, we were brought to this from members of the community, and we have engaged with members of the community and envision doing that throughout the process of hopefully getting this building redeveloped and put back to productive use.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm now going to go to public comment. And I think I'll just go off the orientation of my screen here. So I'll start with Sister Marjorie and then move to Mr. Evans. So Sister Marjorie, if you could unmute.
Okay. St. Bernard's is very much in favor of this project. We have interviewed several people that were interested at different times in different years for uses of the building. But because Spring Grove Village does need some housing, and this was workforce housing, which covers a majority of the people who live in Spring Grove Village, it seemed to be a very good fit for the project as well as for us. I think what Mr. Berry said also about the surrounding buildings, this is a cutout. The surrounding buildings still belong to the parish, the archdiocese. And in back of the buildings that are in back of the school building is quite a long hill that goes all the way down to Circle. So I don't see where any of this project would interfere with anything on Circle Avenue because the building is right on Derby. The parishioners here were in favor of this all along the negotiations, and I think it would be a boon to the neighborhood, that it would be something that people could be proud of, the way it will look and fit into the neighborhood. So we back up Mr. Berry. We would like to see this happen.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your testimony and for being here, Sister Marjorie. Okay, I'll move on to Dave Evans, and from there go to Gary Robbins. So, Mr. Evans, if you could unmute.
Okay, thank you. I'm representing the Village Development Corporation, which has been in existence since 1981. I'm on the board as treasurer. And Mr. Berry came to our meeting and made a presentation. We listened to his proposal. We asked a lot of questions, listened to some objections from at least one of our board members. And overall, the board voted to support Mr. Berry with this project. Part of our mission is to encourage affordable housing in Spring Grove Village. And this certainly would bring, I think the application said 15 to 16 units of housing, which we need. And I know from my involvement with St. Bernard's, we were on probably a 5-year process of figuring out what to do with that building. And even at one point in time, the possibility came up that it would be raised because it was just sitting there. We couldn't find any workable uses for it. So the Village Development Corporation lends its full support to this project.
So just to make sure I understood one of your points correctly, you working with the parish tried for approximately 5 years to find an economically viable use, and you were unable.
Yes, that is correct. We had a whole committee set up, established through our finance council and our parish council, a separate committee to figure out a use. It started out, we were going to try to lease the building or lease spaces in the building. And for various reasons, those things never worked out. So then we started to explore the process of selling the building, got full support from the Archdiocese of Cincinnati and all their separate councils that had to vet the project and approve the sale and come up with a price. So there's been a lot of work that's gone into this plan and this negotiation and the level of support that was required to help it move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Appreciate your testimony here today. Okay, gonna move to Mr. Robbins, and then we'll go to Mr. Oswald. Mr. Robbins?
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can, yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity to just address the group here. The school building down there is near and dear. I know the building quite intimately from previous work there. But it's been vacant or certainly underutilized for the last 20 some years. And that's not good for a neighborhood to have property sit unused. And the opportunity to have this building repurposed in a good way with workforce housing will be an asset to our neighborhood. So it's taken a building that's a negative and turning it into a positive. We invited Mr. Berry to share the vision and his plans for the building at our last at a September 12th community council meeting, so that residents in the neighborhood could learn more about what's going on, meet Mr. Barry. And the response was positive that the neighborhood would be supportive of the project. So we're anxious to see it get going. It'll be a plus for the neighborhood.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Appreciate your testimony here today and your letter, which again will be part of the record. I'm going to go out of order for just a second. I have a couple clarifying questions for Mr. Barry. If Mr. Barry, if you could unmute for just one moment. How many total units are going to be going in here?
We've asked for 16. It'll be either 15 or 16. Right now the architects have the primary floor footprint and layout projected downward and up. The problem in the basement is the way that thing is built. There are all kinds of elevation changes and structural masonry load-bearing walls. So whether that works downstairs or not is up for debate. And talking with staff, they suggested, look, say the maximum number and you can always step back and we won't have to repeat this process again. So it will be 15 or 16.
Got it. Okay. And this may be a better question for Sister Marjorie, but how long has the building been vacant?
I'll defer to Sister Margie on that.
It has been partially occupied. There was a little Christian church that met in the basement on Sunday for the last 5 years. They have since relocated. At different times, there have been charter schools that Cincinnati Public had there. None of them, I think, lasted in the building more than a year, maybe 2 years. And then as they moved out, there would be a Christian school come in and they would leave, and then another Cincinnati Public charter school. So it's been a lot of in and out, but it has never been totally utilized since our school for the parish left, which I think was in 1972.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay. Moving on to Mr. Oswald and then Mr. Howery. Mr. Oswald, if you could raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Yes, again, that property and the church property borders my entire backyard. They currently rent out the annex on Fridays and Saturdays night to different groups, and I'm constantly picking up trash out of my yard. The vandalism that's taken place to my property from that area goes on every year. I've been to juvenile court 4 times and gained nothing because I've told that my case was approved. I would be reimbursed for damages and nothing ever occurs. But I am opposed to that for any type of affordable housing or low income housing, because you've got a unit right there next door to it that is a multi-family apartment complex full of sex offenders, drug addicts, and thieves. Right down on the next street on Derby Avenue, you've got another apartment building full of homeless and charity work, and they roam the neighborhood all hours of the night. People have been confronted by them. So I'm very concerned about the type of people that will be moving into this new apartment for affordable housing. I'm also concerned about my property value decreasing because of this. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Howery? You'll need to unmute, Mr. Howery.
There we go. Yeah, I just had a bunch of questions for the developer. I'm sorry, I believe his name was Mr. Barrett or what have you. One way or the other. I've looked at the floor plan that they proposed there, and I see that on the first floor, there's 5 750 square foot units, and supposedly the second and proposed third floor that they're going to build is going to be the same or very similar. I'm just curious as to what the total expected tenant occupancy that they're expecting of that building, and the unit sizes. Are we talking studio apartments? Are we talking 1 bedrooms? Are we talking 2 bedrooms? That type of deal. Those are some of the questions I have. Also, my biggest concerns, being here on Derby Ave, directly across the street from the project, would be basically the parking, traffic, noise, and like the gentleman before me said, crime, potentially crime. But I see that each one of the units, the 15, 16 units, has been assigned or will be assigned 1 parking spot. Okay, which that's why I'm questioning the size of these apartments, where the studios 1s, 2s, because, all right, that's because for each one of these apartments, chances are there's going to be at least a couple people living there, which means there's going to be a couple cars. Okay, so that potentially is 16 or more cars they got to figure out where they're going to park. All right, now on Derby Ave, between Circle Ave and Winton Road, there's only maybe 4, 5, 6 parking spots tops, which are generally used by the people who already live here. So trying to figure out where all these other people's cars are going to park. That's going to be a bit of an issue, I believe. So if maybe he could respond to some of these questions about the apartment sizes, what the maximum total occupancy is. I'm just curious, because I know, say it's a studio apartment or a 1 bedroom. Chances are, yes, 1 person might live there, but it might be a young couple, could be a young couple with a kid. Chances are they're going to have 2 cars. All right, so I foresee an overflow of this parking issue. On top of that, they're going to have friends, relatives, neighbors dropping by. That's more cars, more traffic, but basically more parking issues. And I'm just curious if there is any visitor parking designated on their property. And maybe we can start with that. I know it's a lot all at once, but basically all circles around, like the unit sizes, what they're proposing there, and the traffic and the parking situation. We can start there.
Sure. So I'll give Mr. Berry an opportunity to respond, but just so I'm clear, your testimony is that between Circle and Winton along Derby, that there are only 4 or 5 parking spots on the street. Is that right?
Is this?
And is there only parking on one side of Derby, or can you park on both sides?
Well, no, but there's driveway. I mean, it's really only 1 block between circles around from Winton Road, comes up, circles around up to Derby Ave. In between, all right, this is kind of encompasses the property across the street, which we're talking about here. Between that corner, I'm just saying, if someone can't park in their lot, they're going to park on the street somewhere. They're not going to park probably 4 blocks down the road. You know what I mean? I'm just saying there's only a few parking spots between encompassing this property, counting both sides of the street, because there's driveways and this, that, and the other thing. And there's, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, there's a few parking spots, but a lot of times those are being used, also by people that already live here. But nonetheless, I'm just saying is like they have allocated 1 parking space for each apartment. Quite likely, there's going to be more than 1 car per unit, depending on who's living there.
Sure, I got you. I just want to clarify that, because I was just looking at Google Maps, and I actually drive down this street a lot, and it seemed like there were maybe more than 4 or 5. But
up on the other end, up on the bottom end, where from Mitchell Ave meets Derby Ave, and between Circle and Mitchell on the other end of the street, there's a little more parking. Up on this end, there isn't so much.
Gotcha.
And I can't imagine someone who lives there is going to park on the end down by Mitchell Ave and walk all the way up the street to come to their house. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. Let me allow Mr. Berry to respond. Mr. Berry,
Sure.
there were questions about unit size, about total occupancy, parking, traffic concerns, and then 2 people now have mentioned concerns with crime.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to address the questions of crime first. Start off just by saying that the parish, in my experience, has been very responsive. They sent me an email the other day saying that, hey, some kids were over on our property and looked like they threw a rock. They're very responsible in that regard. our tenants here are going to be no different than our tenants at any of our other properties. And those tenants tend to be nurses, school teachers, restaurant workers. These are all employed people that frankly make a decent, relatively livable wage. These are not criminals. These are not people that are on income support from social services. These are all people that work, they're students, and they're frankly a very good group of people. And that's going to be no different here. These are not people that are going to be vandalizing property, et cetera, et cetera. They've got lives to lead, they've got school programs to complete, they've got jobs to do. That's what our tenants look like. That has never been an issue in with any of our tenants, and I don't anticipate it's going to be an issue here. In terms of the unit mix, I do not have the exact unit mix yet. With the architects, we wanted to get an idea of the number of units we were going to do and see that it was possible and go through the process of this variance request as well as other due diligence items. And assuming that this is successful, they're going to turn their attention to that unit mix. I think, for better or worse, that a number of those units are going to be 1-bedroom apartments. And I say for worse because the reality is, and that's the majority of our portfolio, is 1-bedroom units. But the reality is, I see it all the time now that there is a need for larger apartments, that 1 and 2-bedroom apartments for people that have kids, for a single parent or a young couple that has a child or two. So we will try to incorporate, on that top floor. Obviously, we have some more flexibility because that's not there, and we can build the structure of that addition in such a way that hopefully we can accommodate some 2-bedroom. So I would like to see at least 5 2-bedroom units there. In terms of parking, every time that I've been to the property, there has been what I consider pretty ample street parking. That street's very wide. Anytime that I pull up in front of the school building, there's nobody at all parked out there. And so I don't see it's an issue. I think that the requirements are a parking unit per apartment, which we have there at the property. My assumption also is that, not everybody is going to be, is going to have a car. This is on a bus line. That's part of the analysis we do. That's part of the analysis that the financing sources we go to are going to look at. So, that's my response to that.
Okay. All right. Mr. Howard, did you want to add anything else before we moved on to the zoning department?
I'm just not quite sure. The developer there keeps addressing how wide the streets are. The width of the street doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't make any difference one way or the other. You know what I mean? People park on the side of the road. There's only so many spots. But he's talking about if it's going to be 5 2-bedroom apartments up there, and you got another 10 1-bedroom apartments, 6.
Mr. Howard.
Yeah.
Mr. Howard,
Yes, can you hear me?
you're breaking up a little bit on us here.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Could I add something to the parking?
Yeah, sure. Just briefly.
The parking on Avenue is very limited. In front of the school, in the parish itself, it is wide. But once you pass that parish, the street narrows. And at one time, the north side of the street was entirely no parking. Residents that lived in those apartments on Derby Avenue took those signs down so they could park there. When they park on both sides of the street, it becomes a one-lane area. There's been several cars sideswiped right there at the corner of Derby and Circle. And the police reports had been made out. And the city had been contacted about the no parking signs being replaced on that side of the street, which they failed to do. But parking and transportation back and forth on Derby Avenue is very limited going up and down the hill.
Okay.
And the fire station is right there. And when they have to make a turn, when cars are parked on both sides of Derby Avenue, it's practically impossible for them to get out. That's why they started going out Winton Road and taking the long way around to get to Winton Terrace. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. I am going to just spend one more minute on this, and I'm going to ask Mr. Robbins to unmute, or Mr. Evans, as I share my screen briefly here. I don't think I got an answer to this question. Can you all see the map here? Yeah. So this is Circle and Derby. As we look forward here, my question is parking allowed both on, this is to Mr. Robbins, is parking allowed both on this side of the street and this side of the street along this stretch? Are you aware?
I'm not exactly sure, but I think only on the left side, there's a red car.
Okay.
But I'm not certain of that.
Okay. Does anyone, Sister Margie or Mr. Evans, are you aware whether or not there is parking allowed on the north side of Derby Avenue here, where my cursor is, even all the way up into this? And I think, this is where it matters whether the street is wider or not, because I don't see why someone wouldn't be able to park here. There's at least 4 or 5 parking spots directly across from the school, as I can see. And then as you turn around, I'm seeing spots all along here. I'm also noticing that most of these houses have driveways and off-street parking, parking along here. So I guess, my question is this stretch here, which would provide a lot of parking, does anyone know whether or not that is permitted? I don't see any signs in these images, but if they've been taken down or tampered with, that's a different subject. Does anyone know the answer to that?
I'll contribute this. That section of Derby Avenue all the way down to Mitchell Avenue has been a concern with regards to cut-through traffic, folks coming off the highway, and instead of going down Spring Grove and up Winton, they come through the neighborhood. We've experienced a lot of traffic on Derby Avenue, and that's why at the end of Derby, where it meets Winton, the city eliminated the slip lane to the right to try to reduce the amount of traffic through that area. If traffic is lower, what I want to say is that section of the road is exceptionally wide there. I would think there'd be an opportunity for reconfiguring the lanes there if necessary to allow for more parking on that wide section.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Robbins. All right.
I would also
Sure.
Can I say something? We have a very good working relationship with Mr. Berry, and we will work with him on parking in our lot as things develop. On occasion, somebody had mentioned, having visitors, guests, like on Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, our folks are gone by between 10:30 and 11. And we would be fine with their visitors parking in the rest of our parking lot on occasions when there's going to be a lot of people having company. And if it's not on a big holiday, if we're aware of a need for extra parking on a particular day, we would be glad to work that out. The folks here, we don't have many people here at all, 1, 2, 3 cars during the week. Sunday is when we have a lot of cars, but our service is at 9:30 and everybody's gone by 11. So I think we can work with people on additional parking. And I think somebody did bring up the daycare across the street. We have talked to them about if we would happen to have an overflow parking because of Mr. Berry's tenants on a Sunday, and they have agreed to work with us on that. So I think that parking can be worked out.
Okay. Great. We're going to move on to the zoning department now. I've heard all the information on parking. It's something I will consider when I'm rendering a decision. So, Mr. Lashide or Ms. Ahouse, would you like to provide any testimony in addition to the staff report you submitted?
Yeah, I'll speak. Thank you, David. So yeah, the request is for a use variance to permit multifamily residential in a single family zoning district. This is a pretty difficult type of application. We don't approve that many of them. Really, it's a demonstration that the building cannot legally be used without the variance. The applicant needs to demonstrate that there's some sort of unusual condition about the building or property that, when located within a single family district, cannot be put to an economically viable use. I believe that has been done. The building is about 10,000 square feet. It was a former school building, so it would be difficult to use that building for a single family residential use. The applicant and Sister Margie has stated that it's been available for, I believe you said, 5 years, and partially vacant in some capacity, transient occupants for about 50 years. So I believe that evidence stated demonstrates that there is some sort of unusual condition about this building and that a use variance may be needed in order to restore the building to a productive use. So after we've established that a use variance is necessary here, what uses would be the least impactful on the surrounding neighborhood? And Mr. Berry has stated that this may not be a strictly single family neighborhood, although it's zoned single family. There are multifamily properties, some civic uses like a church, a daycare. It's a fairly eclectic development pattern. It's not just a street of single family homes. So with that context in mind, there's some use variances that we see for things like breweries, or restaurants, or event centers. Those would generate a higher volume of traffic, potentially more noise. A multifamily residential use and 16 or 15 units is fairly low density compared to some of the higher density multifamily that we see in the city. So I think that a low density multifamily use is appropriate here. The floor plan makes sense for the building. I don't think there would be too much of a negative impact on, I know we've talked about traffic or parking, and they meet the parking requirement. There's a requirement that there be one space per unit. That's been met. So we don't have any additional concerns about parking from a zoning perspective. So yeah, just to reiterate, I feel that a use variance would be necessary to restore the building to productive use, and a low density multifamily use is appropriate in this area.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate your work on the staff report, Mr. Lashide, and your testimony here today. Mr. Evans, do you have a question? We're going to move back to the applicant for him to make closing remarks. So if you have a quick question, you can go ahead and unmute. We'll hear it.
It's not a question as much as some background in support of what was just said about the use variance. We have another building on the property that several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, we obtained a use variance for. There was the possibility of establishing a women's shelter for women of abuse and domestic violence, and that variance was approved. So there's a little bit of history about zoning variances on our property.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Evans. Okay, Mr. Berry, this is your opportunity to respond to anything you've heard from the public or the zoning department, and make any closing remarks.
Well, I mean, thank everybody for their participation. I do think that, some of the fears that have been expressed are going to prove to be unfounded. As I've said, I think that our tenants are really just quite an impressive bunch of people. And I expect that's going to be the case here. As a matter of fact, I know that's going to be the case here. And, the school building it's a wonderful building. I think it would be a shame to lose the building. This is an outcome and a solution to that building that's been largely vacant or underutilized for 50 years. And I think that you guys are going to see that it's one that fits in well with the neighborhood. that is going to be a net asset to the neighborhood, that is going to be a net asset to people's values in the neighborhood, and that, overwhelmingly, the community has embraced so far. And so we're looking forward to being neighbors and looking forward to proving you wrong if you have concerns about it. So.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Berry. I think we'll leave it at that. I have heard a lot of testimony here today. I'm going to review all of that, review all of the application materials. As I mentioned at the beginning of the hearing, I will issue a decision in approximately 2 weeks. What I do is after I make a decision, I write it all out. I put it into a PDF, and then I email that written decision, which will cover all the reasoning and the final resolution, if there's any conditions, all of those things. I put it in a PDF, and I'll email it to everybody who's in the hearing here today. So you all will have it really just moments after it's complete. If a member of the public or Mr. Berry disagrees with my decision, there is a 30-day appellate period. You can contact our office to understand how to go through that process. Are there any other questions about the process or procedure going forward? Okay. Well, if you do have any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer any questions. I can no longer take in any evidence or testimony. So if you'd like to tell me something more about this project while you're in favor or not in favor of it, I really can't consider any of that. So please don't send any of that information to me. It won't be a part of my decision or the ultimate outcome here. But I can answer process questions. So feel free to send those my way. Thank you all again for your time and your testimony. I appreciate everyone being here and everyone providing some perspective on this. Hope you all have